remembered. And what is that question? That question is such a man, Obi, who had gone flat out for idealism, is finally naked for rivalry. In the light of this, how would you account for the characterization of Obi in the novel? So Chinua Achebe's novel No Longer At Ease describes the twilight zone between the British rule of Nigeria and the country's independence. It is a transitional period during which the whites are leaving the country and the natives are getting responsible for their own lives. Colonialism is giving way to a post-colonial situation. Nigerians are now forced to negotiate the claims of both colonial modernity and the previously degraded African mode of life. So the period of transition is one in which binary opposition, colonial versus African modernity versus tradition, seems to be collapse and unveiling, and but what Mudimbe, the famous critic, calls the strong tension between modernity and often is an illusion of development and tradition that sometimes reflects a poor image of mythical past. Why would call it a mythical past? Because Africa was a myth to us. So No Longer at Ease was first published in 1960, the year of Nigeria's independence from England. So this is significant because it's a novel that pertains to a trend of literature called post-colonial literature, which I've already studied. So there are many issues that arise out of post-colonialism, issues that authors and writers around the world have had to deal with. Africa, India, and the West Indies all have come out of the colonial era with a new literature that must address the problems that colonialism left behind. Some of the problems in post colonial regions concern language, education, the conflict between traditional ways and Western or European ways, the presence of English, and the corruption. So, those who later moved into the land of the colonizer, for instance, Obi, while studying in England, experienced an entire set of new problems, such as nostalgia for home, memory, and desire for homeland. So when Obi returns from his studies in England, he is an honest, idealistic young man. Learned foreign education. He takes a high-paying job in the civil service, but soon finds that his salary is not sufficient to meet the financial demands made upon him. He also gets involved with a woman his parents and the clan despise. In the end, he's caught taking bribes and is sent to prison. So Obi's fate is that being trying to be honest and being a true African, the man of African soil. The major conflict of No Longer At Ease is the fact that Obi Okonoa, the protagonist of the novel, is caught between two worlds, that of the traditional African, that of changing a new world that lives amidst two cultures, the English and the African. So a young man is caught in between tradition and the ways of the West in his homeland toward the end of the colonial reign. Is entrapped in the dialectic of difference and identity. This is what happens to any man who goes abroad, learns, studies, understands the Western culture, returns home, and then finds himself thrown into a trap. His country that is already involved in corruption, he cannot come out of it, becomes a part and parcel of corruption. So no longer at ease takes up the question of the exact authority of custom and what spaces sustain it, given the challenge posed by the forces of colonialism. Obi constantly struggles to define himself in the two contending spaces, the schizophrenic inherited space in Umopia and its transplanted people, Lagos, which is fully under the hegemony of colonialism. From his books, we come to know how Lagos has become a Nigerian village how Utopia had become a corrupted place. So there Obi himself gets involved in corruption. He didn't want to, but he had to. It was something that it was forced upon him. So the irony is that he learned nothing about the law, but studied English instead. He went to study law, but studied English instead and ends up in court. You see him how hard his life is now. He never expected to become a civil servant at Lagos and then serve his jail term for taking bribe just for a nominal amount. This is what happens to the true nature of an honest man. This is what happens to an honest man at the end. Obi is also admonished not to himself, to give himself to the pleasure of woman. He's away from it, even though he loves a girl. But naturally, his mother does not like it and denies it, and so he is out of it. So, in every way, he has failed. As a man of learnedness, he has failed. As a man of humanity, he has failed. He has gained nothing but only criticism. It's very easy to critique people, but get involved in criticism is very, very difficult. To come out of it once you get involved in it, and such a thing has happened to Obi. Even though he tried his best to be the best of the civil servant in Lagos after his Western education, he saw that it was impossible to be so because the people in his country were all corrupted. And he could not come out of the corruption, he had to be a part and parcel of the corruption. And so naturally you find him that his place is behind the bars, which is not expected of him, but he had to suffer because of a mistake, and that mistake is honesty. For him it is honesty. For honest people, such a mistakes for which they have to suffer. And naturally Obi had to suffer. So this is what we have to write about the answer if we are asked to do so. We have to stay within the answer and at the same time we have to write the answer to its limits, not beyond. Just not make up a story as we just now said, most people make up a story and write it. Depends on the teacher who sees it. So you have to write up to this much, what is required for you to write. You have to remember some facts and figures and then write it.